Welcome back to Weeds That Feed. This is part one, a pantry for wildlife, where we talk a little bit about the insects that a plant interacts with, supports, feeds. And this week we've got Hazel, Corylus avellana. Now, what do we know about Hazel? We know that it was one of the first trees to colonize the British Isles after the last ice age, following birch up the country. It has these incredible catkins this time of year that come out really early, and actually I've come out into the woods and I must admit I'm struggling to find some that are looking amazing. Like a week or two ago when I was thinking about Hazel, the ones in my garden were just looking magnificent. They start as kind of small and brown, and then they go through into like green and then yellow and golden, and now actually they sort of seem to be going where I am over a little bit into sort of brown when they're dropping their pollen. But I've come out into the woods and I've got a lovely little one behind me, and these catkins hold about 240 flowers. That's the male flower that has the pollen, and just above that on the stem of the plant is a little kind of a scaly flower with these styles, red, beautiful sort of deep red styles sticking out the top. And what happens is the pollen, because it hasn't got any leaves on the tree, it's wind pollinated, and the wind can blow that pollen, and it's structured so that they don't self-pollinate. The flowers don't come out at quite the same time, and also just because of the genetic makeup of the plant, essentially they don't self-pollinate. But what happens is the wind blows the pollen from the male flower, it lands on another hazel tree's female flower, and it sits on there and gets stuck to that, and then slowly it releases a pollen tube down into the flower, and it pauses for a few months before fertilizing the egg. And then the process carries on later in the year when it's more appropriate for the fruit and the nuts. Also, Hazel is the biggest supporter of insects of the plants that I've done so far on this. I've only done about, I don't know, 5 or 6 maybe, not that many, but they've been crackers because they've been sort of shrubby and trees quite a lot, because we're in winter still and there's not a lot of sexy flowers out at the moment. So I've been doing trees and shrubs mainly, which tend to support more insects often. And Hazel supports 250 insects, bit of a round number that, but it feeds 2 butterfly caterpillars, the brown hair streak and the comma. Brown hair streak is a vulnerable species, and 82 moths. So we've got the clouded magpie and the magpie, lots of thorns, the early thorn, the large thorn, the purple thorn, the feathered thorn. We got the buff tip and the nut tree tussock. And looking them up, actually some of those moths it supports are struggling a little bit. They're in the Butterfly Conservation State of Moths Report 2021. The large thorn is down 52% in abundance in the last 10 years. The dot moth down 40%, and the lackey down 38%, all in abundance, down in abundance over the last 10 years. And the blossom underwing is down 29% in its species distribution. It also supports 165 phytophagous insects, so larval and other plant-eating insects, from mites and beetles and true bugs, which is sap-sucking creatures, and micromoths. And these are the insects actually that are more specialists to hazel. So things like the hazel slender micro moth, which only feeds on hazel. And just one recorded pollinator. Well, actually, I mean, there must be more, and you see pictures with honeybees on there, but recorded is a parasitic wasp, which is the one pollinator that makes it up to 250 insects that hazel supports. So this makes it a real sort of nursery plant. So it's not one of these big sort of flashy pollinators where you see butterflies and moths, adults flying on it, feeding all the time, like buddleia perhaps, which is like an excellent service station plant in the garden. Hazel is a quiet nursery plant, and actually it's those nursery plants that build up the next generation of larval insects, grubs and caterpillars, which birds love to feed on. We're coming into nesting season, and those chicks in those nests pretty much predominantly eat insects. And those larval insects are a massive part of their diet. So hazel is doing a great job, as are a lot of those other sort of woodland and woodland edge plants. Hazel, of course, supports the hazel dormouse, another vulnerable species. So there we have it for this week's Weed That Feeds. Hazel, not that showy, quite common, but again, an absolute amazing plant, really underrated. And in Weeds That Feed Part 2, Grow This Instead, we're going to look at some other garden ornamental plants that we use around this time of year, where hazel would actually be amazing, so much better for wildlife than some of the ornamentals we might be using. So, see you there.